Don't trust your husband, my father whispered on his deathbed, his weathered hand gripping mine with surprising strength. The words hung in the sterile hospital air like a curse, defying everything I thought I knew about my perfect marriage. To Marcus, before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I squeezed his fingers, assuming the morphine was making him delirious. Dad, you're not thinking clearly. Marcus loves me. He's been here every day, bringing you those magazines you like, talking baseball with you for hours. My father's eyes, clouded with pain but sharp with purpose, found mine. The safe, Emma. When I'm gone, check the safe. The combination is your mother's birthday, a month, day, year. Promise me. Dad, please don't talk like, promise me. His voice carried an urgency that cut through my denial. I promise, I whispered, tears blurring my vision. 3 hours later, he was gone. Marcus held me as I sobbed in the hospital corridor, his expensive cologne mixing with the antiseptic smell of death. He's at peace now, sweetheart, he murmured, stroking my hair. Your father lived a good life. 82 years, built a successful business from nothing, raised an amazing daughter. I pulled back to look at my husband of 7 years. Even in grief, I couldn't help but appreciate how handsome he was, those piercing blue eyes that had first captivated me at the charity gala, the perfectly styled dark hair that never seemed out of place, the confident smile that made everyone in the room feel like they were the most important person there. The funeral arrangements, I said weakly. I don't know where to start. Leave everything to me, Marcus said, pressing a kiss to my forehead. I'll handle all the details. You just focus on grieving. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. That should have been my first warning sign, how quickly he took control, how eagerly he stepped into managing my father's affairs. But I was drowning in sorrow, grateful for his support, blind to what I would later recognize as calculated maneuvering. The funeral was beautiful. Marcus had spared no expense, choosing the finest flowers, the most elegant casket, the most prestigious funeral home in the city. My father would have been proud, I thought, watching hundreds of people file past to pay their respects. Business associates, former employees, neighbors, friends. Dad had touched so many lives. Marcus stood beside me throughout the service, his hand on my lower back, playing the part of the devoted husband perfectly. He gave a touching eulogy about my father's integrity, his work ethic, his love for his family. Several people commented afterward on how lucky I was to have such a supportive partner. Your father was like a second dad to me, Marcus told Mrs. Chen, our elderly neighbor. I learned so much from him about business, about being a man of character. I squeezed his arm, proud of how he honored my father's memory. If only I had been paying attention to the subtle ways he was already positioning himself as my father's successor, the natural inheritor of his wisdom and, more importantly, his estate. 3 days after the funeral, I finally worked up the courage to visit my childhood home. The Victorian house on Maple Street felt impossibly empty without Dad's booming laugh echoing from his study or the smell of his pipe tobacco drifting through the hallways. We should start going through his things, Marcus suggested gently as we stood in the foyer. I know it's hard, but the estate lawyers will need an inventory soon. I nodded, though the thought of packing away my father's life into boxes made my chest tight. Maybe we could start with his study? Get the important documents organized. Marcus's eyes lit up with what I mistook for helpful enthusiasm. Great idea. I'll grab some boxes from the garage. My father's study was a shrine to old-world craftsmanship, mahogany bookshelves lined with leather-bound volumes, an antique desk positioned to catch the afternoon light, and behind his chair, an oil painting of my mother that he'd commissioned shortly after her death 10 years ago. It was Marcus who noticed the safe. Emma, look at this, he called from behind the desk. He had moved my father's chair and was examining the wall. There's a safe back here, hidden behind this panel. My heart stopped. Dad's final words came flooding back, check the safe. The combination is your mother's birthday. I know about it, I said carefully, watching Marcus's face. Dad mentioned it before he died. Did he give you the combination? Marcus asked, his tone casual but his eyes sharp with interest. I hesitated. Something about his eagerness made me uncomfortable, though I couldn't articulate why. He said it was Mom's birthday, but I'm not ready to open it yet. It feels too soon. Marcus nodded sympathetically, but I caught him glancing back at the safe several more times as we worked through the afternoon. We sorted through financial documents, old tax returns, business correspondence, the mundane paperwork of a life well lived. But my mind kept drifting to that hidden safe and my father's cryptic warning. That evening, over dinner at our downtown penthouse, Marcus brought up the safe again. "You know, sweetheart, we should probably open it soon," he said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. "There might be important documents in there, insurance policies, his will, maybe stock certificates. The estate lawyers will need everything." "The will is already with the lawyers," I replied, pushing my food around my plate. "And Dad's financial advisor has copies of all his investment documents." Still, Marcus persisted, "There could be other things. Family heirlooms, your mother's jewelry, maybe some cash for emergencies. Your father was old school, he might have kept important things in there." His logic made sense, but something in his tone set off alarm bells. I had learned to trust my instincts about people during my years working in nonprofit management, reading donors and volunteers, sensing hidden agendas beneath polished presentations. Marcus was displaying the same subtle pushiness I'd seen in overeager board members trying to influence committee decisions. "Tomorrow," I said finally. "I'll open it tomorrow." But Marcus wasn't in our bed when I woke up the next morning. A note on the kitchen counter explained he'd had an early client meeting, would be back by noon, loved me. Normal husband behavior, except for the nagging feeling that he was avoiding giving me time alone with whatever was in that safe. I drove to Dad's house, my mother's birthday echoing in my mind, April 15, 1962. The morning sun slanted through the windows of his study, highlighting dust motes dancing in the air like tiny spirits. Everything was exactly as we'd left it yesterday, except the safe panel was slightly ajar. My blood ran cold. Had Marcus come back here without me? I approached the safe with trembling fingers. The combination lock was still secured, but the wooden panel that concealed it had definitely been disturbed. Someone had been here, examining it, maybe trying to figure out the combination. With shaking hands, I entered the numbers, April 15, 62. The safe clicked open. Inside, I found exactly what I'd expected and nothing like what I'd feared. My mother's jewelry box sat on the top shelf, containing her wedding ring, a pearl necklace, and the sapphire earrings she'd worn on special occasions. Below that, manila envelopes marked with my father's careful handwriting, insurance, property deeds, emergency cash. But tucked in the very back, in an envelope marked simply Emma, was a letter in my father's handwriting and a thick folder of documents that would change everything I thought I knew about my marriage. I opened the letter first. "My dearest Emma, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I pray I was wrong about Marcus. But if my suspicions are correct, then you need to know the truth about the man you married. For the past 2 years, I've been investigating your husband. What started as a father's protective instinct became something much darker when I discovered patterns that couldn't be explained by coincidence or bad luck. Marcus has been married before. 3 times, in fact. Each marriage ended with the wife's untimely death, and each time, Marcus inherited everything. The first wife, Jennifer, died in a car accident after only 2 years of marriage. The second, Patricia, had a fatal allergic reaction to medication she'd never been prescribed. The third, Caroline, drowned in their swimming pool despite being an excellent swimmer. I've hired private investigators to confirm these details. Their reports are in this folder, along with copies of death certificates, insurance payouts, and financial records that show a disturbing pattern. Emma, I believe your husband is a serial killer who targets wealthy women, marries them, and then murders them for their inheritance. I've been trying to gather enough evidence to prove it, but my illness has progressed faster than expected. If something happens to me before I can expose him, please know that my death was not natural. Check my medical records carefully. Trust no one except Detective Sarah Chen. Her contact information is in this folder. She's the only person I've shared my suspicions with. I'm so sorry to burden you with this, my darling girl. I know how much you love him, how happy you seemed. But your safety is more important than my fear of being wrong. Protect yourself. Trust no one. And remember, I love you more than life itself. Your devoted father, Robert. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the letter. This had to be a mistake, a sick joke, the ramblings of a dying man whose medication had affected his judgment. Marcus loved me. We were planning to start a family soon. He brought me coffee every morning, remembered my favorite flowers, held me when I cried about missing my mother, but as I opened the investigative folder, photograph after photograph told a different story. 3 beautiful women, each strikingly similar in appearance, blonde, petite, successful in their own right. Each had married Marcus Sterling, though he'd used different last names each time. Each had died under suspicious circumstances within 3 years of their wedding. Each had left everything to their devoted husband. The private investigator's notes were meticulous. Jennifer Carmichael, 32, heiress to a pharmaceutical fortune. Married Marcus Sterling in 2015. Died in a single-car accident in 2017 when her brakes mysteriously failed. No witnesses. Insurance payout, $2.3 million, plus inheritance of $15 million. Patricia Westwood, 29, successful real estate developer. Married Marcus Stone in 2018. Died of anaphylactic shock in 2020 after consuming shellfish, except her medical records showed no history of seafood allergies. Insurance payout, $1.8 million, plus business assets worth $8 million. Caroline Hayes, 35, tech entrepreneur who had sold her startup for $50 million. Married Marcus Stern in 2021. Found drowned in her backyard pool in 2023. Despite being a competitive swimmer in college, she apparently couldn't get out of 4 feet of water. Insurance payout, $3.2 million, plus the remainder of her fortune. The pattern was unmistakable. Rich women who met him at charity events or business functions. Whirlwind courtships of 6 to 8 months. Beautiful weddings. A few years of apparent happiness. Then sudden, tragic accidents that left him wealthy and free to hunt his next victim. Me. I was victim number 4. The folder contained one more document that made my blood freeze, a copy of my own life insurance policy, the one Marcus had encouraged me to increase just 6 months ago for security in case anything happened. The beneficiary, my beloved husband. The payout, $5 million, plus my inheritance from Dad's estate, which was worth at least $20 million. I heard the front door open downstairs. Emma? Honey, are you here? Marcus's voice carried up from the foyer, warm and concerned as always. Quickly. I shoved everything back into the safe except the letter, which I folded and tucked into my bra. The combination spun easily as I locked it, my fingers steady despite the terror coursing through my veins. I'm in Dad's study, I called back, forcing my voice to sound normal. Footsteps on the stairs, then Marcus appeared in the doorway. He looked perfect as always, his suit immaculate, his smile gentle and loving. But now I noticed things I'd missed before, the way his eyes immediately went to the safe, the slight tension in his shoulders, the calculating look that flickered across his face before he resumed his concerned husband expression. How are you holding up, sweetheart? He asked, crossing to me and pulling me into his arms. I know this is hard. His embrace felt like a trap now. I forced myself to relax into it, to play the part of the grieving daughter who suspected nothing. Better. I lied. I opened the safe. I felt him tense slightly. Find anything important? Just Mom's jewelry and some documents Dad had already told the lawyers about. Nothing surprising. The relief that flowed through his body was palpable. I'm glad it wasn't anything troubling. Your father loved you so much, he wouldn't want you to carry any additional burdens. As he held me, I realized with crystal clarity that my father had been right about everything. The man I'd married, the man I'd planned to spend my life with, the man I'd trusted with my heart and my future, was a killer. He had murdered 3 women before me, and he was planning to make me number 4. But unlike his previous victims, I had something they didn't. Advance warning, the game had changed. Marcus thought he was playing a grieving widow-to-be, but he was actually facing someone who knew exactly what he was. The question now wasn't whether he would try to kill me. It was when, and how I could stop him first. Let's go home, Marcus murmured against my hair. I'll make you dinner, we can watch a movie, just relax together. That sounds perfect, I replied, meaning every word. After all, I had a murder to prevent, my own. The drive home from my father's house was a masterclass in deception. I sat in the passenger seat of Marcus's BMW, nodding at appropriate intervals as he discussed funeral expenses and estate planning, while my mind raced through everything I'd learned. Every casual touch of his hand on my knee, every concerned glance in my direction, every gentle word of comfort now carried a sinister undertone. "The insurance company called today," Marcus said as we pulled into our building's underground garage. "They want to schedule an appointment to discuss your father's policy. Probably just routine paperwork." My father's policy. I hadn't even thought about that yet, but Marcus clearly had. Of course he had. It was likely substantial, another piece of his expanding fortune built on the graves of women who had trusted him. "How much do you think it is?" I asked, testing him. "Oh, I have no idea," Marcus replied smoothly, but I caught the slight hesitation. "Your father was private about his finances. Could be anything." Liar. He knew exactly how much it was worth. He'd probably researched it months ago, just like he'd researched my own policy when he convinced me to increase it. Our penthouse apartment had never felt more like a trap. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city, but tonight they felt like walls closing in. Marcus moved through our space with easy familiarity, loosening his tie, pouring himself a scotch, asking if I wanted wine. The same routine we'd followed hundreds of times, except now I understood it. Was all performance. "I should call Detective Chen," I said, remembering my father's letter. Dad mentioned her, apparently she helped him with some business security issues. "I should let her know he passed." Marcus's glass paused halfway to his lips. "Detective Chen? From the police department. Dad hired her for some consulting work on the warehouse security system." The lie came easily. I was learning to match his deception with my own. "That seems unnecessary," Marcus said carefully. "I'm sure the funeral home notified the appropriate authorities about his death. It's just a courtesy call. Dad always said it was important to maintain professional relationships." I pulled out my phone, scrolling through contacts I didn't actually have, buying time to think. The detective Chen mentioned in my father's files. I needed to contact her, but not while Marcus was watching my every move. "I think I'll shower and go to bed early," I announced. "This whole week has been exhausting." "Of course, sweetheart." Marcus crossed to me, placing a gentle kiss on my forehead. "You've been so strong through all of this. Your father would be proud." The bathroom door had never felt more secure as I locked it behind me. With the shower running to mask any sound, I pulled out my phone and the business card I'd memorized from Dad's files. "Detective Sarah Chen, Metro Police Department, Fraud Investigation Unit," she answered on the second ring. "Detective Chen. This is Emma Sterling," I whispered. "Robert Morrison's daughter. I think my father wanted me to call you." A pause. "Can you speak freely?" "No. My husband is right outside." "I understand. Your father shared some concerns with me. Are you somewhere safe tonight?" The question sent a chill through me. Was I safe? Marcus was 20 feet away, probably listening to the shower, planning whatever came next in his deadly timeline. "I think so. For now. Meet me tomorrow. There's a coffee shop called Luna's on 5th Street, near the courthouse. Can you be there at 10 a.m.? "Yes." "Emma, be very careful. Your father was convinced he was running out of time." The line went dead. I stood under the scalding water, letting it wash away the fierce sweat that had broken out across my skin. Tomorrow, I would learn exactly what my father had discovered, and hopefully, how to stay alive long enough to stop Marcus. When I emerged from the bathroom in my nightgown, Marcus was already in bed, reading on his tablet. He looked up with that smile that had once made my heart flutter and now made my stomach turn. "Feeling better?" "Much." I slid into bed beside him, forcing myself to curl against his side the way I always had. His arm came around me automatically, and I had to concentrate on keeping my breathing steady. "Marcus?" I said softly, playing the grieving daughter card. "Can I ask you something about Dad?" "Of course." "Did you ever notice anything strange about his behavior lately? Before he got really sick?" I felt Marcus's body tense slightly. "What do you mean?" "I don't know. He seemed paranoid sometimes. Asking weird questions about our marriage, about your business, about whether I was happy. Almost like he suspected something was wrong. It was a dangerous game, but I needed to know how much Marcus knew about my father's investigation. His response would tell me whether I was walking into a trap or if I still had the element of surprise. "Honey," Marcus said, his voice filled with gentle concern, "your father was dying. Brain tumors can cause personality changes, paranoia, confusion. The doctor mentioned that, remember? Smooth. So smooth. But there had been no brain tumor, Dad had pancreatic cancer, and Marcus knew that. The lie confirmed everything I needed to know about his guilt and his awareness of the threat my father had posed. "You're right," I murmured against his chest. "I just miss him so much." "I know you do. But we have each other, and we're going to get through this together." Together. Until he killed me and moved on to wife number 5. I lay awake long after. Marcus's breathing deepened into sleep, staring at the ceiling and planning. The investigation folder was still locked in Dad's safe, which meant I needed to retrieve it without Marcus knowing. I needed to contact Detective Chen with more than just whispered phone calls. And I needed to figure out Marcus's timeline. When was he planning to make his move? The insurance money from Dad's death wouldn't come through for weeks, maybe months. Marcus was patient, methodical. He'd established the pattern with his previous wives, a period of apparent normalcy followed by a sudden, tragic accident. I probably had time, but not much. At 3 a.m., I felt Marcus stir beside me. In the dim light from our bedroom windows, I watched him slip quietly out of bed and pad to his home office. Through barely opened eyes, I tracked his movement, noting that he carefully closed the office door behind him. 20 minutes later, he returned, sliding back into bed with the practiced silence of someone accustomed to midnight activities. I forced my breathing to remain deep and even, playing the part of the sleeping wife while my mind raced with questions. What was he doing in there? Research? Planning? Communication with someone else? Morning brought the familiar routine with a sinister undertone. Marcus made coffee, prepared my favorite breakfast, kissed me goodbye before heading to his investment firm. All normal husband behavior, except for the way his eyes lingered on my face, as if memorizing it. As if saying goodbye the moment his car pulled out of the garage. I was on the phone with my assistant at the foundation where I worked. "Kelly, I need to take the rest of the week off. Family emergency follow-up." "Of course, Emma. Take all the time you need. Should I reschedule your Thursday board meeting?" "Thursday. 3 days away." "Yes, please. I'll call you when I'm ready to come back." I drove to Dad's house with a careful eye on my mirrors, paranoid that Marcus might have me followed. The neighborhood was quiet, normal, elderly Mrs. Patterson watering her garden, the mailman making his rounds, kids waiting for the school bus. No suspicious cars, no watching eyes. The safe opened easily with Mom's birthday, and I retrieved the entire investigative folder. This time I read everything carefully, absorbing details that would help me understand exactly what I was facing. Marcus's real name was Michael Sterling. He'd been using variations of it with each marriage: Marcus Sterling, Marcus Stone, Marcus Stern, staying close enough to his identity that he wouldn't slip up, but different enough to avoid immediate detection. Smart, the private investigator's notes revealed his method. He trolled charity events and business functions, looking for successful, wealthy women without extensive family networks. Women who were accomplished but lonely, confident in business but vulnerable in love. Women like me. His approach was always the same: charming, attentive, playing the role of the supportive partner who encouraged their success while secretly documenting their assets. The courtships lasted 6 to 8 months, just long enough to seem genuine but not so long that he got bored or made mistakes. After marriage, he would spend 1 to 2 years establishing himself as the devoted husband, building relationships with their friends and colleagues, positioning himself as the natural inheritor of their lives. Then came the acceleration phase: updated insurance policies, new wills, subtle changes that put him in control of their finances. Finally, the accident. Always different, always plausible, always profitable. The scariest part was how good he was at it. The police reports showed no suspicion of foul play in any of the deaths. He'd never even been questioned. To the outside world, Marcus Sterling was a grieving widower with terrible luck in love. My phone buzzed with a text: "Hope you're having a peaceful day. Love you. M." I stared at the message, wondering if this was code for something. Was he checking to see if I was home? Making sure I was following my normal routine? "Love you too," I typed back. "Just missing Dad. See you tonight." The response came immediately, maybe we should plan a little getaway soon. Some time to heal away from all the memories. A getaway. The perfect opportunity for an accident. Remote. Location, no witnesses, grieving widow who tragically slipped and fell during a romantic hike. That sounds wonderful, I replied, each word feeling like signing my own death warrant. Luna's coffee shop was busy enough to provide cover but quiet enough for conversation. I spotted Detective Chen immediately, a petite Asian woman in her 40s, sitting in a corner booth with clear sightlines to all entrances. Professional paranoia that suddenly seemed very reasonable. Emma? She stood as I approached, and I could see she'd been studying my photo. I'm Sarah. I'm so sorry for your loss. We shook hands, and I noticed her subtle scan of my appearance. Probably checking for signs of abuse or distress. Finding me outwardly normal seemed to relax her slightly. Your father was convinced he was running out of time, she said once we'd ordered coffee. He'd been gathering evidence for months, but his illness progressed faster than expected. How much do you know? Everything. The previous marriages, the suspicious deaths, the financial patterns. Your father hired the best private investigators. Money could buy. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. Emma, we believe your husband has killed 3 women. We just can't prove it yet. What kind of proof do you need? Something that directly links him to their deaths. All the evidence so far is circumstantial, suspicious but not criminal. No witnesses, no physical evidence, no smoking gun. I thought about Marcus's midnight trip to his office. What if he's planning something? What if I could document his preparations? Detective Chen's eyes sharpened. What do you mean? He's been acting strange since Dad died. More controlling, more interested in Dad's finances. Last night he was up at 3 a.m. doing something in his office. And this morning he suggested a romantic getaway. Emma, you cannot put yourself at risk trying to gather evidence. These aren't petty criminals, this is someone who's killed 3 people and gotten away with it. But if I don't try, he's going to kill me anyway. The words hung between us, stark and terrifying in their truth. Detective Chen studied my face for a long moment. Your father thought the same thing. He was convinced. Marcus was accelerating his timeline because of the inheritance from your father's estate. $25 million. More than Marcus had ever stood to gain from a single victim. What did Dad want me to do? Disappear. He had a plan to fake your death, relocate you somewhere safe, let Marcus think he'd won while we built a case against him. The idea was tempting, escape, safety, a new life far from Marcus's reach. But it would also mean 3 murders went unpunished, and Marcus would simply find wife number 5. There has to be another way. Detective Chen pulled out a business card and wrote something on the back. This is my personal number. If anything happens, anything at all that makes you uncomfortable, you call me immediately. Day or night. And if I want to help catch him, then we do it very, very carefully. And with backup plans for backup plans. As I drove home, my phone rang. Marcus. Hi, sweetheart. How's your day going? Quiet. I went to Dad's house for a while. Just sitting in his study. It helps me feel close to him. That's healthy. Grief is a process. His voice carried that therapeutic tone he used when manipulating me into decisions. I've been thinking about our trip. What would you say to the cabin upstate? The one we looked at last summer. My blood turned to ice. The cabin was isolated. Surrounded by woods, miles from the nearest neighbor. The perfect place for an accident. That sounds lovely, I managed. Great. I'll make reservations for this weekend. We both need some time away from the city. 4 days. He was giving me 4 days to live. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever think about the future? About us having children? Growing old together? There was a pause, just a beat too long. Of course I do. Why would you ask that? I don't know. Losing Dad made me think about family, about legacy. What we leave behind. We'll leave behind a beautiful life together, Marcus said smoothly. Full of love and adventure. Adventure. Like hiking trails where wives could have fatal accidents. I love you, I said, and for the first time in our marriage, the words felt like weapons. I love you too, Emma. More than you'll ever know. As I hung up, I realized the deadly game had begun in earnest. Marcus thought he was setting the final trap, But he didn't know that the mouse had become a cat. The question was, which one of us would survive the weekend at the cabin? That evening, I became a spy in my own home, while Marcus showered after work. I slipped into his home office with a small camera Detective Chen had given me during our second meeting that afternoon. The room that had always been off limits, just boring investment reports, honey, suddenly felt like a crime scene waiting to be discovered. His computer was password protected, but I'd watched him type it countless times. Emma 2017, the year we married. The irony of using my name to protect his murder files wasn't lost on me. What I found made my hands shake as I photographed each screen. That night, as Marcus slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and thought about the women who hadn't gotten advance warning. Jennifer, Patricia, Caroline, they'd gone to their deaths trusting the man they loved, never knowing he was leading them to slaughter. I wouldn't be victim number 6. But first, I had to die. The plan would begin tomorrow, and by Thursday evening, Emma Sterling would be dead, officially, publicly, and convincingly enough to make Marcus believe he'd gotten away with murder once again. What he wouldn't know was that the dead woman would be watching his every move, gathering evidence of his guilt, and preparing to rise from the grave to destroy him. After all, the best revenge is the kind your enemy never sees coming. Wednesday morning arrived with the false normalcy of a perfect storm gathering strength. Marcus left for work with his usual kiss goodbye, completely unaware that by evening, his world would implode in ways he couldn't possibly anticipate. At 9 a.m. sharp, I met David Chen at a nondescript warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, what looked like an abandoned building had been transformed into a sophisticated operations center. Multiple computer screens, surveillance equipment, and most importantly, a medical base staffed by Dr. Elena Vasquez, a trauma surgeon who specialized in witness protection cases. The drug we're using will slow your heart rate to barely detectable levels, Dr. Vasquez explained as she prepared the injection. You'll appear dead for approximately 6 hours. It's dangerous, but we've used it successfully before. What are the risks? Honest answer? If something goes wrong, you could actually die. If we miscalculate the dosage, if you have an unexpected reaction, if we can't revive you properly. She met my eyes directly. Your father understood these risks when he developed this plan. He believed stopping Marcus was worth dying for. I thought about Caroline Hayes, found floating face down in her own pool. About Patricia Westwood, gasping for breath as her throat closed from an allergic reaction she'd never had before. About Jennifer Carmichael, trapped in a car with failed brakes, watching the tree rushing toward her. How long do I have to decide? The operation begins at 2 p.m., David said, checking his watch. Marcus expects you home by 5. That gives us a 3-hour window to stage everything perfectly. I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of 5 murdered women on my shoulders. Do it. The next hour was spent rehearsing every detail. The staged car accident would occur in the parking garage of my building. David's team had already planted surveillance equipment and positioned emergency vehicles nearby. When Marcus arrived home, he would find police cars, ambulances, and neighbors gathered around the wreckage of my BMW. The key, Detective Chen explained, is that it has to look suspicious enough to warrant investigation, but plausible enough that Marcus believes it's real. We need him to think you discovered something and someone silenced you for it. What if he doesn't take the bait? He will, David said confidently. Psychopaths like Marcus have massive egos. He'll assume someone else was trying to eliminate you before he could, and that will make him angry. Angry people make mistakes. At 1:30 p.m., Dr. Vasquez administered the injection. The world began to blur around the edges as my heart rate slowed dramatically. The last thing I remembered was David Chen's voice, "See you on the other side, Emma." I woke up in complete darkness, my body aching and my mind foggy. Gradually, I became aware of voices nearby, Detective Chen and David discussing surveillance footage. "He's been there for 3 hours," Sarah was saying. "Playing the grieving husband perfectly. Answered all the right questions, showed appropriate emotion, even provided an alibi for this afternoon." "Where am I?" I croaked, my throat raw. "Safe house," David replied, helping me sit up. "Welcome back to the living." Through a small window, I could see it was full dark outside. "How long was I out?" 7 hours. "You gave us a scare, took longer than expected to bring you back." Sarah handed me a bottle of water. But it worked. Marcus bought it completely. She showed me video footage from the parking garage. Marcus arriving home to find police cars and ambulances. His face a perfect mask of shock and devastation as officers explained that his wife had been found dead in her car, apparent brake failure causing her to crash into a concrete pillar. Watch his eyes, David instructed. I studied the screen. While Marcus's mouth spoke words of grief and disbelief, his eyes were calculating, scanning the scene for details that didn't fit his own plans. He's trying to figure out who killed me, I realized. Exactly. And that paranoia is going to be his downfall. The next footage showed Marcus at the hospital, identifying my body, actually a Jane Doe. David's team had prepared with makeup and prosthetics. His performance was Oscar-worthy, the devastated widower who couldn't understand how his beloved wife's brakes could have failed so catastrophically. Did he ask to see the car? I asked. First thing he requested, Sarah confirmed. Spent 20 minutes examining the brake lines with a mechanic. He knows someone tampered with them because he didn't do it himself. And now? Now he's home, supposedly making funeral arrangements. But our surveillance shows he's actually packing. He thinks someone's onto him, and he's preparing to run. This was the crucial moment. Marcus had spent years perfecting the art of grieving widower, but he'd never had to play the role while genuinely believing someone else had beaten him to the kill. His paranoia would make him careless, desperate to tie up loose ends before disappearing. There's something else, David said, pulling up more surveillance footage. He made a phone call from your apartment. We couldn't get clear audio, but he was arguing with someone. Angry, defensive. Any idea who? We're working on it. But the call came from a burner phone, and it was brief. I studied the timestamp. Marcus had made the call at 11:47 p.m., hours after my supposed death. Who would he call at that hour? Who else was part of his network? We need to get closer, I said, standing on unsteady legs. I need to see what he's really doing. Absolutely not, Sarah said firmly. You're officially dead. If he sees you, he won't. But I know him better than anyone. I can predict his next moves. David was already shaking his head. Too risky. We have surveillance covering every exit, every window. He can't make a move without us knowing. But I was already thinking like Marcus, calculating his psychology. He was a meticulous planner who just had his entire timeline destroyed by an unknown enemy. He would be methodical about his escape, but first, he would need to know who had interfered with his plans. He's going to go back to Dad's house, I said suddenly. What? The safe. He knows I opened it, but he doesn't know what I found. If someone killed me because I discovered something about him, that evidence would be in Dad's safe. Detective Chen and David exchanged glances. Even if you're right, we have surveillance on the house. Not inside. And Marcus is smart enough to disable external cameras. I moved toward the equipment table where my street clothes were folded. I'm going there. Emma, you can't, I'm already dead, I interrupted. Officially, legally, completely dead. This is the only chance we'll ever have to catch him with his guard down. 20 minutes later, I sat in the back of an unmarked van parked 3 blocks from my father's house. Despite David's protests, Detective Chen had agreed to let me observe, recognizing that my insights into Marcus's psychology could be crucial. Movement, reported Officer Martinez from his position across the street. Black sedan, no plates visible. Through the van's surveillance monitors, I watched Marcus park in the shadows between streetlights and approach Dad's house with the confidence of someone who belonged there. He'd changed clothes since the hospital, gone were the grief-stricken widower's rumpled shirt and haunted expression. This was Marcus in predator mode, efficient and deadly. He's got tools, David noted, watching Marcus pick the front door lock. With professional speed. This isn't his first break-in. Inside Dad's house, infrared cameras tracked Marcus's movement through the rooms. He went straight to the study, moving with the certainty of someone who'd been there before. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He's been in the house before, I whispered. When? While Dad was in the hospital. Maybe multiple times. He knew about the safe, knew where to look. On screen, Marcus was already behind Dad's desk, examining the safe. But instead of trying to open it, he was installing something, a small device I couldn't identify. What is that? Detective Chen asked. David enhanced the image. Motion sensor. With a camera. He's not trying to get into the safe, he's waiting to see who comes for it. The brilliance of it was chilling. Marcus knew someone had information about him, someone dangerous enough to kill me to protect their investigation. By monitoring the safe, he would identify his real enemy. He doesn't know the police are involved, I realized. He thinks it's a personal vendetta. Maybe one of his previous victims' families. Marcus finished installing his surveillance device and moved through the house methodically, checking for other hiding places, other evidence that might exist. He was thorough, professional, terrifying in his efficiency. Then he did something that made my blood freeze. He pulled out his phone and took a selfie in Dad's study, smiling. Son of a bitch is making a trophy, David muttered. Folder after folder of research on his previous wives. Not just financial records, but detailed surveillance notes. Photos taken from a distance. Maps of their daily routes. Medical information that could only have been obtained illegally. Jennifer's food allergies, later used to poison her. Patricia's medication schedule, manipulated to cause her fatal reaction. Caroline's swimming routine, turned against her in the pool. And then I found my folder. Emma Morrison Sterling, target number 4-inch. Read the label. Inside were photos of me I'd never seen, at work, at the grocery store, at my father's house. Detailed financial records including accounts I didn't even know Marcus had access to. My complete medical history, somehow obtained from my doctor's office. A timeline tracking my emotional state following Dad's death, but the most chilling discovery was a subfolder labeled Accident Scenarios. The cabin plan was meticulously detailed. Hiking trail maps with elevation markers and dangerous drop-offs marked in red. Weather forecasts showing a storm system moving in over the weekend, perfect. Cover for poor visibility and slippery conditions. Even photographs of the cliff overlooking Ravens Lake, with handwritten notes about depth and recovery difficulty. The plan was sophisticated and horrifying. A romantic hike to the scenic overlook, a sudden storm, a tragic slip on wet rocks. My body wouldn't be found for days, maybe weeks. Marcus would return to the cabin alone, distraught, to call for help. The grieving widower who'd lost his beloved wife in a terrible accident. I photographed everything, my camera clicking quietly as I documented my own planned murder. The shower was still running. Marcus always took 20-minute showers, another routine I'd memorized without realizing its importance. The final folder was the most damning, post-event protocols. Step-by-step instructions he'd written for himself on how to behave after each murder. Emotional responses to practice. Legal procedures to follow. Financial transfers to execute. Even scripts for conversations with police and insurance investigators. The man I'd married was not just a killer, he was a methodical psychopath who planned murders like business presentations. Emma? You okay out there? Marcus's voice carried from the bathroom. Fine. I called back, quickly closing files and clearing the computer's history. Just checking my email. I slipped out of his office and settled on the couch with a book, forcing my racing heart to slow. When Marcus emerged in his bathrobe, hair damp and smelling like expensive cologne, he found me reading peacefully. How was your day? He asked, settling beside me and pulling me against his side. Quiet. I spent some time at the foundation, just catching up on emails. Kelly's handling everything beautifully. Good. You need time to process everything. His fingers stroked my hair with practiced gentleness. I confirmed our reservation at the cabin. We leave Friday afternoon. 3 days. I had 3 days to build a case that would stop him, or to disappear before he could kill me. I can't wait, I lied, leaning into his touch. We haven't had time alone like that in months. It'll be perfect. Just us, nature, no distractions. A chance to really connect. Connect. Is that what he called murder? The next morning, Marcus left for work early, claiming a breakfast meeting with potential investors. The moment his car disappeared around the corner, I was back at Dad's house, this time with a different mission. Detective Chen had given me a list of things to look for, any communications my father might have had with the previous wives' families. Any additional evidence he'd gathered, any backup plans he'd made in case something happened to him. Dad's computer yielded gold. Email correspondence with Jennifer's sister, Patricia's business partner, Caroline's best friend. He'd been methodically contacting people from Marcus's past, sharing information, building a network of suspicious survivors who'd been asking their own questions about the convenient deaths. One email chain particularly caught my attention. Caroline's sister, Lisa Hayes, had hired her own private investigator after Caroline's death. She'd never believed the drowning story. Caroline had been afraid of something in the weeks before she died, had mentioned feeling watched, had even asked Lisa to be the executor of her will instead of Marcus. She kept saying Marcus was acting strange. Lisa had written to my father. Different. Like he was studying her instead of loving her. She was planning to file for divorce. That explained the accelerated timeline. Marcus didn't wait for the marriages to naturally deteriorate. He killed them when they started to suspect. I forwarded the email chain to Detective Chen, then continued searching. In Dad's desk drawer, beneath old tax returns, I found something that made my blood freeze. A copy of Marcus's real background check. His name wasn't Michael Sterling. It was Martin Steele, and he had a juvenile record that had been sealed but not destroyed. 2 girlfriends in high school had died in accidents within a year of each other. At 17, he'd already perfected his method. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, "Missing you today. Can't wait for our weekend away." I stared at the message, then at the background check showing 30 years of calculated murder. This wasn't a man who'd started killing after we met. This was a predator who'd been hunting his entire adult life. I called Detective Chen. "I need to see you. Now. I found something." An hour later, we sat in her unmarked police car in the parking lot of a shopping center, going through the evidence I'd gathered. "This changes everything," she said, studying Marcus's real background check. "With juvenile crimes and this pattern of behavior, we can get warrants." "What about the cabin?" "He's taking me there Friday." "You're not going." "But if I don't, he'll know something's wrong. He'll disappear, find another victim." Detective Chen turned to face me fully. "Emma, listen to me carefully. This man has killed at least 5 people, starting when he was a teenager. He's had 30 years to perfect his methods. You cannot outsmart him. But what if we could catch him in the act? What if I wore a wire, had backup nearby? Too risky. One technical failure, one moment where he suspects something, and you're dead." I thought about Jennifer, Patricia, Caroline. About the next woman Marcus would target if he got away. About my father's conviction that someone had to stop this monster. What if we had a better plan? Detective Chen's expression was skeptical, but she was listening. "Marcus thinks he's in control of the timeline. What if we change it? What if something happens to me before we get to the cabin?" "Explain." "You said Dad had a plan to fake my death. What if we do that? But we make it look like Marcus killed me here, in the city, where you can monitor everything?" She was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "It would have to be perfect. One mistake and either you're really dead or he walks free." "Tell me about Dad's plan." Detective Chen pulled out a secure phone and made a call. "I need to talk to David Chen. Tell him it's about the Morrison case." 20 minutes later, a man who looked like Sarah's older brother arrived at our car. David Chen, she explained, was a former CIA operative who now ran a private security firm. He'd been consulting on Dad's case. "Your father was a smart man," David said after I'd explained what I wanted to do. "He understood that sometimes the only way to catch a perfect predator is to make him think he's succeeded." "Can we do it?" "It's dangerous. But yes, we can do it." The plan they outlined was elaborate and terrifying. We would stage my death in a way that looked like Marcus had accelerated his timeline, perhaps a home invasion gone wrong, or a car accident that appeared suspicious enough to trigger an investigation but not so obvious that he'd realize it was a trap. "The key," David explained, "is making him think he's been exposed but not caught. We need him to act like a guilty man trying to cover his tracks. And then? Then we watch him implicate himself trying to escape." That evening, I performed the most important acting job of my life. Marcus came home to find me upset, anxious, claiming I'd been getting strange phone calls all day. "Someone kept calling and hanging up," I told him, pacing our living room. "And I swear I saw the same car parked outside the foundation this morning and this afternoon." Marcus's attention sharpened. "What kind of car?" "Dark sedan. Tinted windows." It could be nothing, but after Dad's warnings about being careful, I let my voice trail off, planting the seed that I was starting to suspect something. What warnings? Oh, just general stuff about being aware of my surroundings now that I'm alone. You know how protective he was. I watched Marcus calculate, weighing whether my father might have told me something specific. His decision to accelerate the timeline was visible in his eyes. Maybe we should leave for the cabin tomorrow instead of Friday, he suggested casually. Get away from the city stress sooner. Perfect. He was taking the bait. That sounds good, I agreed. Though I should probably stay in town until the insurance investigator meets with me about Dad's policy. When is that scheduled? Thursday morning. Another lie, but a necessary one. We could leave Thursday afternoon then. I'll call the cabin, see if we can change our reservation. As Marcus made the call, I texted Detective Chen, he's moving the timeline up. Thursday afternoon. Now. Her response came quickly, we'll be ready. Stay strong. But I understood something else. Marcus was documenting his victory. In his mind, he'd won. The mysterious enemy who'd killed his wife had also eliminated his biggest threat, me. With both my father and me dead, there was no one left who could expose him. He was already planning his next hunt. We need to move now, I said, standing. Before he disappears completely. The surveillance device complicates things, Detective Chen warned. If we approach the house, he'll know someone's watching. Not someone, I corrected. Me. The plan that formed in my mind was insane, desperate, and probably fatal. But it was also the only way to catch Marcus with absolute certainty. I'm going to trigger his device, I announced. Emma, no, think about it. He's expecting whoever killed me to come for the evidence in Dad's safe. When I appear on his camera, a woman who's supposed to be dead, he'll realize he's been played. He'll come back, probably armed, definitely desperate. And probably ready to kill you for real this time, Sarah pointed out. But you'll be watching. You'll have probable cause, evidence of his intent, everything you need for conviction. David was already running calculations in his head. We'd need perfect positioning, backup plans for backup plans. If this goes wrong, if we don't try, he walks away and kills again. How many more Carolines and Patricias and Jennifers have to die because we were too careful? Through the van's monitors, we watched Marcus leave Dad's house as quietly as he'd entered. His phone would alert him within minutes if anyone approached the safe. It was time for the dead to rise, and this time, Marcus Sterling wouldn't see it. Coming until it was far too late, the dead woman walked into her father's house at exactly 11:47 p.m. I moved through the familiar rooms with deliberate slowness, knowing Marcus's camera was tracking every step. The infrared sensors David's team had installed showed my heat signature as I approached the study, a ghost returning to finish unfinished business. In my earpiece, Detective Chen's voice was steady but tense. He got the alert. Phone activity shows he's viewing the feed now. I paused at the study doorway, looking directly at the hidden camera Marcus had installed. Through the tiny lens, I knew he was watching a dead woman stare back at him. The psychological impact would be devastating. Marcus Sterling, who controlled every variable, faced with the impossible. Wave, David instructed through my earpiece. I raised my hand in a small, deliberate gesture. A greeting from beyond the grave. Jesus, came Detective Chen's voice. His phone just exploded with activity. He's making calls. I moved to Dad's desk and began entering the safe combination, my fingers steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Marcus would recognize my movements, would know I was accessing the evidence that could destroy him. The evidence he thought had died with me. Vehicle moving, reported the surveillance team. Black sedan, heading your direction fast. 23 minutes. That's how long it took Marcus to drive across the city in the middle of the night, probably breaking every traffic law in his desperate rush to confront the impossible. I was ready. For him, the safe was open, its contents spread across Dad's desk in clear view of the camera. Photos of Marcus's previous wives. Police reports. Financial records. Insurance payouts. A timeline of murder spanning 3 decades. Everything that proved what he was. He's parking 2 blocks away, came the update. Approaching on foot. Through the study windows, I could see the street remained empty and quiet. But I knew Marcus was out there in the darkness, moving with the stealth of a predator who'd done this many times before. The difference was that tonight, the prey was Waiting. Remember, David's voice in my ear, keep him talking. We need him to incriminate himself. The front door lock clicked. Marcus had kept a key, of course he had. The grieving son-in-law who would naturally have access to his deceased father-in-law's house. His footsteps on the hardwood floor were deliberately quiet, but I tracked his approach through the house. He was being careful, probably armed, definitely. Confused about how his dead wife had managed to break into a house and access evidence that should have been beyond her reach. I stood with my back to the study door, apparently absorbed in reading the documents spread across the desk. In the reflection of Dad's computer monitor, I could see Marcus appear in the doorway, his face a mask of cold calculation mixed with genuine shock. "Hello, Marcus," I said without turning around. Or should I say Martin Steele? The silence stretched between us like a blade. Then, his voice, carefully controlled, "This is impossible." "Is it?" I finally turned to face him. "You of all people should understand that death isn't always what it seems." He looked exactly the same as always, handsome, well-dressed, composed, except for his eyes. Those piercing blue eyes that had once made me feel loved now held the flat, predatory stare of something inhuman. "You were dead," he said, more to himself than to me. "I saw your body. I identified you at the morgue. You saw what someone wanted you to see." I gestured to the documents on the desk. "Just like Jennifer, Patricia, and Caroline saw what you wanted them to see. Right up until the moment you killed them." Marcus stepped into the room, and I noticed the slight bulge under his jacket. Armed, as expected. But David's team was positioned throughout the house, and Detective Chen was listening to every word. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Dad figured it out first. Took him 2 years to gather all the evidence." I picked up one of the police reports. Jennifer Carmichael. Car accident in 2017. Except the brake lines were cut so precisely, it had to be someone with mechanical knowledge. Your father was a paranoid old man. Patricia Westwood. Allergic reaction in 2020. Except her medical records show no history of seafood allergies, and the restaurant she ate at had no shellfish on the menu that night. Marcus was studying me with the same calculating look I'd seen him use when analyzing investment portfolios. Weighing options, calculating risks, planning his next move. Caroline Hayes, I continued. Found drowned in her own pool. Olympic level. Swimmer who supposedly couldn't get out of 4 feet of water. Accidents happen, he said smoothly. Tragic coincidences. 3 wives, 3 accidents, 3 insurance payouts totaling over $7 million. That's not coincidence, Marcus. That's a business model. He laughed, and the sound was genuinely amused. You always were smarter than the others. Jennifer was too trusting, Patricia too naive, Caroline too emotional. But you? He shook his head appreciatively. You actually figured it out. I had help. Dad left me everything I needed to destroy you. And yet here you are, alone in a dark house with a man you believe is a killer. Not very smart after all. Marcus moved closer, his hand drifting toward his jacket. Through my earpiece, I heard Detective Chen's urgent whisper, "Team Alpha, move. To position 2. "I'm not alone," I said calmly. "Did you really think I'd walk into this without backup?" Bluffing. If the police were involved, they'd have arrested me by now. They needed proof. A confession would be ideal. From a dead woman? Even if you somehow survived that car accident, your testimony would be worthless. You're emotionally compromised, psychologically unstable from grief. No jury would believe you. He was right, and we both knew it. All the evidence Dad had gathered was circumstantial. Marcus had been careful, professional, leaving no direct connections to any of the deaths. But they believe a recording, I said, touching the small device clipped to my collar. Of you admitting to 3 murders. Marcus's eyes narrowed as he spotted the recording equipment. Clever. But hardly admissible in court. Illegal surveillance, coercion, entrapment. Maybe. But it would be enough to reopen the investigations into your wives' deaths. Enough to freeze your assets while they examined your financial records more carefully. Enough to make your life very complicated. Or, Marcus said, pulling a gun from his jacket, I could simply finish what someone else started. The grieving widower who discovered his wife's miraculous survival, only to lose her again in a tragic confrontation with an intruder. The weapon was small, professional, the kind used by someone who understood ballistics and crime scene analysis. He'd probably used it before. You'd have to explain how I survived the first time. Medical error. It happens more often than people think. A doctor declares someone dead prematurely, and they wake up in the morgue. Embarrassing for the hospital, but not unprecedented. Marcus had thought this through quickly, adapting his story to fit the new circumstances. It was exactly the kind of methodical problem-solving that had made him so successful at murder. The only complication, he continued, is that this time, you really will be dead. No medical tricks, no fake drugs, just a bullet in the brain. And the surveillance equipment in this room? What surveillance equipment? He smiled coldly. I'm sure whoever installed it will remove it before the police arrive. Can't have evidence of illegal monitoring, after all. I realized with growing horror that Marcus had thought several steps ahead. He'd identified not just my deception but the entire operation supporting it. Somehow, he'd figured out about Detective Chen's team. How? I asked. Your father wasn't as careful as he thought. The private investigator he hired? One of my former business associates recommended him. Professional courtesy, we've been monitoring each other's activities for years. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Dad's investigation had been compromised from the beginning. Marcus had known about every move, every piece of evidence, every plan. Detective Chen thinks she's hunting a serial killer, Marcus continued. Conversationally. She has no idea she's been hunting a ghost. Every piece of evidence you've gathered, every surveillance recording, every witness statement, I've seen it all. Then why didn't you just disappear? Because I was having too much fun. Do you have any idea how boring it gets, killing the same type of woman over and over? Lonely heiresses, successful businesswomen, wealthy widows, they all break the same way. He gestured with the gun, his excitement growing as he spoke. But you were different. You had a protective father, a suspicious mind, actual resources to fight back. You were a worthy opponent. And now? Now you're just another dead wife. But at least you made it interesting. Through my earpiece, I could hear movement in the house, David's team positioning themselves for the takedown. But Marcus was standing too close, the gun aimed directly at my chest. Any sudden movement would trigger a shot. One question, I said, buying time. The car accident yesterday. If you didn't cause it, who did? Marcus's smile was genuinely puzzled. I have no idea. But I owe them a debt of gratitude. They eliminated my biggest threat and gave me a perfect cover story for your real death. What if I told you there was no car accident? That I staged my own death to draw you into the open? Impossible. I saw the wreckage, examined the brake lines myself. David Chen is very good at his job. Former CIA, expert in tactical deception. He made sure everything looked authentic. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Marcus's face. You're lying. The morgue photo was makeup and prosthetics. The brake lines were cut by professionals. The entire accident scene was theater designed to make you believe someone else had beaten you to the kill. Marcus processed this information with the same analytical approach he used for everything else. I could see him working through the implications, recalculating his position. If that's true, he said slowly, then this entire evening is a trap. Yes. And the police are listening to everything we've said. Yes. Which means you've already won. Before I could respond, Marcus smiled one last time and turned the gun on himself. No. I lunged forward, but the shot echoed through Dad's study. Before I could reach him, Marcus Sterling, serial killer of at least 5 women, collapsed against my father's bookshelf, his blood staining the leather-bound volumes that had been Dad's pride and joy. But as Detective Chen and her team burst through the study door, I realized that even in death, Marcus had managed one final calculation. He'd cheated justice by choosing his own end, taking with him any secrets about other victims, other accomplices, other crimes that might never be solved. The dead woman had won the battle, but the war against monsters like Marcus Sterling would continue long after his heart stopped beating. The blood had been cleaned from my father's study, but the stain on my memory remained permanent. 3 weeks after Marcus's suicide, I sat in Detective Chen's office reviewing the final report on what the media had dubbed the Sterling murders. The evidence we'd gathered had been enough to officially reopen investigations into Jennifer, Patricia, and Caroline's deaths, posthumously confirming what we'd known all along. The insurance companies are cooperating fully, Detective Chen reported, sliding a thick folder across her desk. They're paying out settlements to the victims' families and pursuing criminal fraud charges against Marcus's estate. I nodded, though the victories felt hollow. Justice for the dead was important, but it couldn't bring back 3 brilliant women whose only crime had been trusting the wrong man. What about the compromised investigation? The private investigator who was feeding information to Marcus? Sarah's expression darkened. Dead end, literally. Thomas Brennan was found in his office 2 days after Marcus's suicide. Apparent heart attack, but given the timing. She shrugged. Some secrets die with their keepers. You think Marcus had backup plans? Other people working with him? I think Marcus was more connected than we realized. The kind of operation he was running, multiple identities, forged documents, insider information on his targets, that requires resources beyond what one person can manage alone. The thought sent a chill through me. Even dead, Marcus cast a long shadow. There's something else, Detective Chin continued, pulling out a manila envelope. We found this in Marcus's safety deposit box. It's addressed to you. My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Marcus's careful handwriting. Emma, if you're reading this, then you've proven yourself more formidable than I anticipated. Congratulations on your victory, it was well earned. You should know that you were never supposed to be victim number 4. You were supposed to be my partner. I chose you not just for your wealth, but for your intelligence, your resourcefulness, your capacity for deception. The shy, grieving daughter act you performed so convincingly? I recognized it because I've been performing my own role for 30 years. I had hoped to gradually reveal the truth, to show you how liberating it could be to take what you want from those too weak to protect it. Together, we could have built an empire on the graves of the gullible, but your father's interference forced my hand, and your moral limitations made partnership impossible. Enjoy your inheritance, darling. You've earned every bloody penny. Your devoted husband, Marcus P.S. Check the hidden compartment behind our bedroom mirror. I left you a parting gift. I stared at the letter, my mind reeling. Marcus had wanted me as an accomplice, not a victim. In his twisted worldview, our marriage had been a recruitment attempt. Are you okay? Detective Chen asked, studying my pale face. He wanted me to join him. He thought I could be like him. Emma, listen to me very carefully. You are nothing like Marcus Sterling. The fact that his letter disgusts you proves that. But, doubt not at me. Had I enjoyed the deception too much? The careful planning, the psychological manipulation, the thrill of outmaneuvering a master manipulator? Was there something dark in me that Marcus had recognized? We need to check the apartment, I said, standing. The hidden compartment he mentioned. An hour later, David Chen and I stood in what had been my bedroom with Marcus, feeling like archaeologists excavating a crime scene. Behind the antique mirror Marcus had insisted on hanging, we found a recessed space containing 3 items that made my blood freeze. The first was a leather journal filled with Marcus's handwriting, detailed observations about me over the course of our 7-year marriage. When I smiled genuinely versus when I was performing. How I reacted under stress. Which manipulation techniques worked best on my psychology. I had been his longest study, a 7-year experiment in behavioral analysis. The second item was a set of driver's licenses and passports in various names, all with Marcus's photo. His escape identities, ready for when he eventually tired of being my husband. Each identity came with complete financial records, property deeds, and business registrations. Marcus Sterling had been just one face in a rotating cast of characters. The third item destroyed any remaining doubt about Marcus's true nature: photographs, not just surveillance photos of his victims, but trophies. Pictures of Jennifer moments before her car crash, looking happy and unsuspecting as she left their house for the last time. Patricia at dinner the night she died, raising a glass of wine and a toast. Caroline by their pool, laughing at something Marcus had said minutes before he drowned her, and dozens of photos of me. Sleeping, working, crying over my father's illness. Marcus had been documenting my life like a predator studying prey, except these photos spanned our entire marriage. I hadn't just been his next victim, I had been his most comprehensive project. He was obsessed with you, David observed quietly. No, I corrected, understanding finally. He was studying me. Learning from me. I was supposed to be his masterpiece, the wife who became his willing partner. The journal contained detailed analysis of what Marcus called my criminal potential. He'd identified moments when I'd bent rules, told strategic lies, manipulated situations to my advantage. Normal human behavior that he'd interpreted as evidence of a kindred spirit. Emma demonstrates remarkable capacity for calculated deception, read one entry from our 3rd year of marriage. Her management of the Foundation's board politics shows sophisticated understanding of human psychology. With proper guidance, she could excel at more profitable applications. Today, Emma orchestrated the removal of a problematic board member through careful information management and social pressure. Read another. She eliminated her opposition without them even realizing they'd been outmaneuvered. Natural predatory instincts. This is sick, I said, dropping the journal. He was grooming me. For what? To become him. Detective Chen arrived as we finished cataloging Marcus's hidden materials. Her expression was grim as she reviewed the evidence. This changes everything we thought we knew about the case, she said. Marcus wasn't just a serial killer, he was building a network. Training a successor. What do you mean? Look at the pattern. 7 years of marriage, detailed psychological analysis, gradual exposure to criminal thinking. He was trying to corrupt you slowly, turn you into his partner before revealing his true nature. The implications were staggering. How many other wives had Marcus attempted to recruit? Had any of them succeeded? Were there other couples out there, husband and wife serial killer teams inspired by his methods? We need to investigate his previous relationships more thoroughly, David said. Not just the 3 wives who died, but earlier girlfriends, business associates, anyone he might have been testing for recruitment potential. Over the following weeks, that investigation revealed the true scope of Marcus's operation. He had indeed been part of a larger network, wealthy psychopaths who shared information, resources, and techniques for acquiring and maintaining their fortunes through murder. The compromised private investigator had been feeding information not just to Marcus, but to at least 6 other individuals across the country, all of whom had suspicious patterns of deceased spouses and financial windfalls. Federal agencies became involved. Assets were frozen. International investigations were launched. What had started as one woman trying to survive her husband's plans had uncovered a conspiracy that spanned decades and crossed multiple countries. But for me, the most important discovery came from Marcus's journal entries in our final year of marriage. Emma's psychological profile suggests she would never willingly participate in murder, he had written. Her moral framework is too rigid, her empathy too developed. Initial assessment was incorrect. She lacks the necessary narcissistic traits for partnership. However, her resources and strategic mind make her valuable in other ways. Final recommendation: standard protocol. Eliminate after insurance policies mature and inheritance is secured. I had never been a potential partner. Marcus's recruitment attempt had failed, so he'd reverted to his original plan: murder me for my money. The elaborate psychological games had been his way of determining whether I could be corrupted, and when the answer proved negative, I'd been reclassified as just another victim. The revelation was both terrifying and oddly comforting. I hadn't been chosen because I was secretly evil, I'd been chosen because I was exactly who I thought I was, just someone with resources that Marcus wanted to steal. 6 months after Marcus's death, I stood in the cemetery where my father was buried, finally ready to say goodbye. The headstone was simple, elegant, exactly what he would have wanted. But I'd added one line he would have appreciated: he protected those he loved until his final breath. Detective Chen joined me at the gravesite, carrying a folder of final paperwork. The insurance settlements are complete, she reported. Jennifer's family received $3.2 million, Patricia's estate got $2.8 million, and Caroline's sister received $4.1 million. All of Marcus's assets have been liquidated and distributed to his victims' families. What about the network investigation? Ongoing. We've identified 12 other suspicious individuals, and 3 have already been arrested. Marcus's records are helping us map connections we never would have found otherwise. I knelt and placed fresh flowers on Dad's grave, white roses, his favorite. He would be proud that his investigation led to stopping others. He would be prouder that his daughter survived and chose justice over revenge. That was the key insight from everything we'd learned about Marcus's psychology. He had expected me to become like him, to let the darkness win. Instead, I'd chosen to use the tools he'd inadvertently taught me: deception, strategic thinking, psychological manipulation, in service of protecting others. The foundation where I worked had expanded its mission to include supporting domestic violence survivors and funding research into psychological profiling of financial predators. My personal experience with Marcus had given me unique insights into how intelligent psychopaths operated, and I was determined to use that knowledge to prevent other women from becoming victims. There was also a personal element to my healing process. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the trauma therapist I'd been seeing, had helped me understand that surviving Marcus didn't make me responsible for his other victims. The guilt I carried, that I should have seen the signs sooner, should have warned the previous wives somehow, was misplaced. Marcus had been perfecting his techniques for 3 decades before I met him. "You didn't create the monster," Dr. Martinez often reminded me. "You just happened to be strong enough to survive him." As I walked back to my car from the cemetery, my phone rang. "Detective Chen. Emma, we just made a breakthrough in the network case. We found records of communication between Marcus and a woman in Seattle. She's been married 4 times, and 3 of her husbands died in accidents." "A female version of Marcus?" "Potentially. And there's something else, she's been asking questions about you. Researching your background, your survival of Marcus's attempt." The old fear returned, sharp and immediate. Even dead, Marcus's influence was spreading. His journals and records had revealed not just past crimes, but potential future ones. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that suggest you might be her next target." Professional curiosity about the woman who outsmarted Marcus Sterling. I thought about my father's final words: "Don't trust your husband." The warning had saved my life, but it might need to be broader. Don't trust anyone who seemed too interested in my story, too eager to befriend the woman who'd survived a master manipulator. What do? We use what Marcus taught us. We watch, we wait, and we prepare. But this time, we have all the advantages. As I drove home to the new apartment I'd bought across town, far from any memories of Marcus, I realized that my father's real gift hadn't been the warning or the evidence in his safe. It had been teaching me that survival sometimes required becoming something you never thought you could be. I wasn't the same woman who'd married Marcus Sterling 7 years ago. That woman had been trusting, naive, vulnerable to predators who preyed on kindness. The woman I'd become was harder, more suspicious, infinitely more dangerous to those who would try to harm her or others like her. Marcus had been right about one thing: I did have a capacity for calculated deception and strategic thinking. But unlike him, I planned to use those skills to protect people, not destroy them. The network he'd been part of had underestimated one crucial factor: sometimes the prey evolves into the predator. And when that happens, the hunters become the hunted. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hello, Emma. I've heard so much about you. Can't wait to meet a friend." I smiled, forwarding the message to Detective Chen while already planning my response. Marcus's colleagues wanted to play games with the woman who'd outmaneuvered their most successful member. They had no idea what they were walking into. After all, I'd learned from the best teacher possible, a psychopath who'd underestimated the strength of the woman he tried to destroy. This time, I would be ready from the beginning. And this time, the monsters would discover what it felt like to be the ones living in fear. My father's final words had saved my life once. Now they would save others. Don't trust anyone completely. Watch for the signs. And when the monsters reveal themselves, be ready to fight back with everything you've learned about survival. The war against predators like Marcus Sterling would continue, but I was no longer just a potential victim. I was a hunter. The end. Emma Morrison Sterling's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of trusting too completely, but also a testament to the power of intelligence, preparation, and the refusal to become a victim. Her father's investigation ultimately prevented dozens of future murders and dismantled an international network of predators who had operated in the shadows for decades. The lesson remains: sometimes the most dangerous monsters are the ones who love you just enough to make you lower your guard. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.